In this video, we're going to continue our journey at looking at stylistic effects inside of Avid Media Composer within Boris FX Continuum, where we were looking at glows in the last movie and what we could do with various clips. This movie is all about distortion, and to find these effects, it's spread over multiple categories. So we're going to begin by opening up the 2B distortion sequence. So just double click that to open it. You're going to find that in the Avid Essentials Training Sequences bin. I have several clips in here, just like we had in the last video, but in this case, let's start off by adding an effect that's going to distort this video image that you see here. So I'll just play it back. And we'd like to add video glitch to this. So we'll hop over to the effects workspace. And once we head there, let's go to the BCC Stylize category, where we'll see several effects that we can choose from. In looking at these effects, let's go with, first of all, with the BCC Plus video glitch effect and drag that onto our clip. We get several glitchy elements that are now overlaid on top of our video. Taking a closer look, we'll head over to our effects properties, and then let's click on the effects editor badge where we can see some of the presets available. So the way that we can get familiar with what Video Glitch offers is to look at the name of each of these presets, not to mention their tags. So combined is a bunch of combined Video Glitch elements to give you an end result. Well, you'll see some which focus on just a particular set of properties, such as if I go here to shake Y light and play back here within the viewer, you'll see this is just shaking the footage. I can continue to play back and actually sift through these presets too. Another great technique where we see some of these are just focused on a heavy jitter, not to mention some other different types of glitchy, distorted based treatments. Now at any time, I can actually just press the Command Z button to go back to the starting properties here. And let's take a look at the parameters here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to make this parameter panel much bigger, so we can take a close look at all of the properties. When looking at Video Glitch, the main controls are at the top and affect the overall glitch. But then you have glitch elements, which are broken down into various categories that you can hop into by clicking on the disclosure triangle and just making tweaks to those by itself. So looking at the top of the effect, right now the trigger mode is set to automatic, and we have a glitch intensity for the overall effect, which can consist of block damage, shift, shake, and flicker. If I increase the glitch intensity, any of these categories that are turned on, so if I hop into this, I can see that block damage is turned on, shift is turned on, shake is turned on, and flicker, all of them become affected by this intensity. So obviously this is quite powerful, so I'll just scale that back down, or I can click on the reset button to bring that down to 40. And then we have a random intensity here, which will ever so often just create randomness within the overall intensity that's set. We then have glitch interval for how often these glitches are taking place. So a lower amount is going to have a much faster glitch versus a higher amount. These glitches will happen not as often. We have glitch duration here. And to see some of these properties better, there's a really handy overlay that we can turn on. So I want you to go all the way down to the curves properties. So you can click the disclosure triangle next to that. And in curve view, let's render it over black. And these little areas that you see here are actually where the glitch hits. So RGBA, or red, green, blue, and alpha, stand for block damage, shift, shake, and flicker. If I turn off block damage, just notice how those red overlays go away. Now, if I go here to these properties and now increase the glitch intensity, just notice how it is doing that for each of those various elements of the glitch. And also notice the effect on the glitch interval and how the glitch randomness actually removes some of these glitches so the interval isn't as constant. So one great way of visualizing video glitch is to turn on these curves, and this is a common thing that you'll see in certain distortion-based effects within the Boris FX Continuum collection. In addition to this, we can actually render this video glitch effect and the intervals over the video clip so we can see exactly where that's happening. And of course, dial these properties down to taste. I'll turn off this view and now head into some of these individual properties where you're going to see how we can control the individual elements. So for instance, when looking at block damage, there's a block size associated with it. And if I set this to be very small, those blocks almost disappear, versus very large, the block element is just getting that much bigger and more erratic. These blocks also have a color. We can bring those down and keep in mind the ability to reset here. Since Video Glitch has so many properties or parameters, it is good measure to save a preset once you have a look that you like. For now, I'm going to apply Video Glitch, and one of the powers of some of these distortion-based effects is that some of these are auto-animated. I'm now going to remove Video Glitch from a clip. Okay, moving to the third clip here in the timeline, what we're going to do is apply an effect from the same category, stylized, called Super LED. And you'll see, once it's applied, we get a treatment of LED bulbs overlaid on top of our video clip. Now, the word super in front of LED is used to describe how much you can do with this effect with all of the properties built in. You've got control for glows and smoke and fog, very similar to atmospheric glow. You've got a built-in video glitch, not to mention Prism, and you can take advantage of all of this. Let's hop into the BorisFX editor. I'll click on the effects editor badge. Under the effect editor, again, we've got some presets that we can choose from. But it's best that we start off with the default right now to get a sense for what we can do with this effect. So what I like to do is head to the parameters, and under the LED section, the control of how these bulbs look, let's scale them up temporarily to get a sense for how these are being overlaid on top of our video. Number one, we can change the scale of these bulbs on both X and Y. We could also increase the spaces between these bulbs by increasing the gap value. I'll bring this back down to 3. And if we're looking for a specific look no further than changing the shape. We can choose a polygon, where we have controls the amount of sides, or square. I'll go back to polygon and settle on an 8-sided shape. Let's now twirl down the fade map properties just underneath. So enabling this will allow us to add a fade map, which will change where bulbs are bigger or smaller across the image. The best way to see this is to actually change the type in this instance to gradient. If we look at the grad controls just at the very bottom of the effect, right now it's set to top to bottom. So the bulbs at the top of the image are large, and then using this fade map, they are small here on the bottom. But we can easily change this to a number of various styles. I'll choose horizontal strip in this case. Then we can play with the size of the gradient, so how that fade map occurs, and then the position of where the fade map occurs, which can give us a really interesting bulb treatment. I'll turn off the fade map for the time being and twirl up those properties. And now turn bulb fade on, which adds a fade to the actual bulbs. Gives it a nice soft fade. We can change the amount of that fade, not to mention the width of it, to give these bulbs a look. And we can also change how these bulbs are staggered, whether it be rows or columns here in our image. Now, if we're trying to mimic LED screens, it is quite common to have certain bulbs just burnt out. And for that, we can create some dead LEDs here in the bulb pattern, and even have these dead LEDs flicker. So I'm going to increase the flicker value quite a bit. And just like we saw with Video Glitch, now we have some automatic animation occurring with our bulbs. When we start to make this value much smaller, I'll bring down the scale here, all of these bulbs to 8 in this case, and also bring down the gap to close to 0, so we don't have so much black. You can see how that's affecting our video clip. Now, different ways of illuminating this LED pattern. There are a few different techniques that we can try. One is that we can increase the strength of an automatic light that's turned on with the default LED value. Right now it's set to parallel, but we could also choose point, where we can increase the strength. I start to play with the position of that point light. Just notice how it's affecting a specific area of the LED pattern. And just notice how parallel is different in the way that it is affecting the image now from the top of it. But if I play with the angle, it's going to affect one of these corners, which could make this ideal for if we are placing this image in an actual screen. Next up, we have flicker, which we became familiar with atmospheric glow. It already has a speed and flicker type associated with that, causing a bit of blinking in the actual entire overlay. The other thing that this has specific to LED is your ability to blink the individual bulbs. So if I increase the blink speed and blink LEDs, right now, all of my LEDs are blinking, quite undesirable. So I'm going to lower that. And just so this is a bit less erratic, go back up to the LED section, where with the dead LEDs, I want to decrease that quite a bit. I want this to be a value of 10 in this case. Go back down to the flicker section. I'm going to also decrease the blink LEDs, just setting this to be much more subtle. Now, if we're looking to, again, make these LEDs more illuminated, at the bottom of the effect, we have some post-color correction controls, which allow us to take this image and brighten it a bit. Not to mention add some gamma, which could add for a more stylized look. And something that I really like is also just blend the overlay of these LEDs in with the actual footage. So you can set this to something like screen, and you can see its impact, or multiply, a bit darker, to create your desired LED look. Now, the sections I just breezed over, we saw a bit of that in atmospheric glow, and we're going to be taking a close look at Prism shortly. So I'll just apply this LED bulb to the third clip, and let's go back to the second clip, where we'll look at a very handy effect called camera shake. So if we look at this clip, there is already a bit of camera movement, but we want more of a handheld feel. So I'll head to the BCC lens category. We'll also find some distortion-based effects. In this case, one specific to our camera or our lenses. Camera shake, just like video glitch, and Prism is auto-animated. Right now set to a very low value, so we're only getting a bit of a subtle shake. Heading to the BorisFX editor, where we can see the presets, we have ones where we can choose just a little bit of handheld movement, or ones where we can really push this up like frantic, where we'll have quite a lot of shake, almost like an earthquake. I'll press undo, Command Z or Control Z on a PC to go back to a little handheld and look at some of the main values here with the camera shake. So things that can really affect this, of course, are the speed. You can set this all the way to a value of 1,000. And amplitude and translation. Amplitude will just have the shake happen more often. How much it shakes in the position value, both X and Y, occurs with translation. And right now it's just set to 3. So it's a very small shake. But if I increase this amount, we're starting to get that erratic feel that we saw with frantic. I could choose to shake this on just the X and Y axis using the separate translation controls here. And most importantly, if I increase this translation to be a bit more aggressive, I want you to see what happens at the edges of the image here. You'll see there's a wrapped pattern, and that's based on the edge mode. So if I set edge mode to transparent, this is what would happen with the shake because this image is moving in its position. Depending on if it's shaking on X or Y, we'll see black on a certain quadrant of the frame. And instead of that, this edge mode allows for either a repeated, reflected, or wrapped pattern. And we can see the impact it has, so we don't see that black. It can be really helpful with our camera shake. This is a bit too much, so I'm going to bring down the overall translation just to a value of 5. and the amplitude maybe to 150, where we can see we now get a more aggressive camera shake along with the natural camera movement that is within this shot. Let me apply that, and we just have a few more distortion effects to look at. When you look at BCC lens, don't overlook some of the effects which will allow for lens distortion. Both lens distortion and wide angle lens can give some unique looks to your clips. I'm going to remove the camera shake now so we can see it on this existing second shot. I'm going to select wide angle lens. You should see some changes happening to the left and right side of this image. Heading into the effects mode and seeing my effect editor here in Avid, this has just a few controls that are visible. One is how distorted this image will be, and just see that impact on the left and right hand side of the image. And then while this is used for correction of a wide angle lens, you can see this can easily be used to also create the feel of a wide angle lens, which could be handy for music videos and treatments such as this. You're going to see a similar set of controls that you can play with for lens distortion as well. So I'm going to remove back to the fourth shot, which is called Prism. And with it selected, just remove the LED look. We'll head back to the stylized category where I'll add one of my favorite effects, which is BCC plus Prism. Number one, it was used on a movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, to create a mirror type treatment. And you can actually see a similar look I created in After Effects if you go to our YouTube channel. But here with Prism, you can see some of the values. We'll head into the effects editor by clicking on the badge and notice these different RGB look treatments that we get with Prism. Now, some of these are quite intense, but let's go with low samples in this case, where you'll see when it's set to 100, you'll see that there is almost like a meshing of the repeated RGB pattern that is being integrated into your shot. Now, when I set the smoothness value to something like 0, now we'll see just those mirrored RGB values. And in fact, we can change the way that this is repeated by looking at the transformation properties. So changing center start, we now have red and blue a little bit off here in the x-axis, but we can also change that in the y-axis depending on the look that we're going for. Now, if we're looking for Prism to act more like chromatic aberration, we'll want to increase the smoothness value. And let me just change the center start here. And then play with the weight of the actual prism. So a lower weight will create a less intense effect. And another thing we can play with is the actual look of the prism. So with chromatic aberration effects, which Continuum also has, you're limited to just the RGB colors by simply going here and changing the mid color. Let me go here to a purple. This will have a dramatic impact on the prism look of our image. Now, if you're finding this prism to be too strong, we can play with other values to mix this into our footage a bit more. I'll go over here to the side just to explore a few more presets. Here we can see some horizontal separation with our prism. And in this case, I'll just lower the global transformation quite a bit so that prism is a lot more subtle across our video clip. Last but not least, I wanted to show you one more distortion effect, and I'll show that on the bokeh shot we saw in the first video. I'm going to head to the BCC Warp category and select and apply BCC Curl. You can see the automatic impact it has on our clip here, and also some other distortion-based effects that we can choose within Warp that might be helpful for our image-based treatments. In this case, I'm just going to head to the effects browser so we can see different presets. And we do a before and after comparison here. Several of these could be great for giving you a heat wave treatment or also look great on motion graphic patterns. And it just so happens that John Dickinson has a tutorial on this for motion graphic users inside of After Effects that you can check out to see some really unique uses of curl. I'll apply that to the clip. Similar to other effects, we've got our main properties here at the top, where we can play with the curl size, the complexity of the curl, and this distortion amplitude, which affects this image quite a bit. One unique thing about Curl is that we've got these on-screen controls that we can play with here in our record monitor to manipulate our image. So there you have it, distortion-based effects inside of Boris FX Continuum. We started this video off by looking at video glitch and how we could use our curves view in order to perfect the look of that glitch. We then took a look at Super LED and all of the various values that are built inside of that. We looked at Prism, we looked at Curl, not to mention camera shake. Again, continuum-based distortion effects are spread over multiple categories, so have fun exploring, and hopefully you can see some of the parallels between these fabulous looks.